The hospital never truly slept. Its hallways breathed with the rhythm of machines, the shuffle of hurried feet, and the quiet sobs of families waiting for news that could change their lives. For Layla, a nurse barely keeping her own world together, the chaos of the emergency room had long become the background music of her existence. It was nearly dawn, her second double shift in a row, when the siren's echo grew louder, then cut sharply as the ambulance skidded to a stop outside the sliding doors. Layla was already moving before the gurney burst through, her tired eyes narrowing in focus. Male patient, mid-30s, car collision, severe internal bleeding, the paramedic rattled off. BP dropping fast. He's O negative. Layla's stomach tightened. O negative. The universal donor, but rare to find stocked in large quantities. She darted to the blood storage fridge, her heart sinking when she saw only a single unit left. Not nearly enough for someone who had already lost so much. The attending physician swore under his breath. He won't survive transport to another hospital. We don't have what he needs. I'm O negative, Layla said suddenly. Her own voice startled her, but once the words were out, she couldn't take them back. The doctor whipped his head around. Layla, you're already running on fumes. You've been on shift for 18 hours. I know. Her tone wavered, but her resolve did not. But he doesn't have time. Hook me up. For a heartbeat, the room stilled, filled only with the frantic beeping of monitors. Then the doctor gave a curt nod. Prep her. A nurse guided her into a chair in the adjoining donor room. Layla rolled up her sleeve, her pulse racing faster than it should have. The needle prick burned, and she clenched her jaw, forcing herself to stay steady. She had donated blood before, but never under circumstances like this, never while watching a man's life hang in the balance, tethered to hers by a plastic tube. Through the glass partition, she could see him. Pale, motionless, his dark hair plastered to his forehead with sweat and blood. His shirt, once tailored and expensive-looking, had been cut away, exposing bruised ribs and the violent aftermath of metal and glass. He looked powerful even in his brokenness, like someone used to commanding boardrooms, not lying helpless on a hospital bed. As the crimson stream filled the bag, Layla's mind wandered. She thought of her overdue rent notice waiting at home, the mountain of medical bills from her late mother, and her younger brother's pleading eyes when he'd asked if she could manage another semester's tuition. She had so little left to give, but in this moment, she was giving the most vital thing she had. The room tilted slightly as weakness crept in. A nurse pressed a cool cloth to her forehead. Easy, Layla, you don't have to push yourself. I can do it, she murmured. Her gaze flicked again to the stranger beyond the glass. Hold on, please, just hold on. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Finally, when the transfer was complete, the staff rushed her blood into his IV line. Layla watched, breath caught in her chest, as color faintly returned to his cheeks. His monitors stabilized, the erratic beeps smoothing into something steady, something alive. Only then did her own body sag in relief, exhaustion crashing over her. She let her head rest back against the chair, whispering to no one in particular, "You're going to make it now." She didn't know his name, his story, or why fate had dropped him into her orbit at the exact moment she was at her weakest. All she knew was that a piece of herself was now flowing through his veins, and some invisible thread bound them before either of them had spoken a single word. The morning sun crept timidly through the blinds of room 407, casting slats of pale light across the sterile white sheets. Machines hummed softly, their steady rhythm a reassuring sign of life. Layla lingered at the doorway, exhaustion still pulling at her bones, but curiosity, something deeper, something unexplainable, anchored her to the spot. The man on the bed stirred, his lashes fluttering against pale skin. Layla's breath caught. He was waking. She had seen countless patients regain consciousness, but this time her pulse quickened, as though she were watching a scene that mattered far more than she could admit. His gray eyes opened slowly, dazed, unfocused. For a moment, confusion clouded them, until they sharpened on her. The intensity of that gaze, stormy, searching, commanding even in weakness, nearly made her step back. "You," his voice was hoarse, each word an effort. "You're the one." Layla straightened, tugging at the hem of her scrubs, suddenly self-conscious. "The one what?" "The one who saved me." His lips curved faintly, a fragile attempt at a smile. "The doctor said you gave your own blood." Her throat tightened. She had hoped it would remain an anonymous act, lost in the blur of medical necessity. It wasn't a big deal. I was just doing my job. No, he said firmly, though his voice faltered with fatigue. That wasn't your job. That was, you. He studied her with a raw intensity that made it hard for her to breathe. You didn't even know me, and you gave me part of yourself. Layla's cheeks warmed. She didn't know how to handle gratitude when she could barely manage her own life. Anyone would have done it. His smile tilted, wry and knowing. You really believe that? I don't. Silence settled between them, heavy yet charged. Layla shifted, ready to retreat, but his next words rooted her to the floor. What's your name? Layla. He repeated it slowly, as if testing the weight of it on his tongue. Layla. I'm Adrian. The name sent a flicker of recognition through her. She had heard it before, in headlines and whispers. Adrian Cole, the elusive CEO of Cole Enterprises, a man whose face rarely graced magazines but whose influence stretched across the city. She had read about his mergers, his brilliance, the ruthlessness that made him untouchable. And now here he was, human, fragile, tethered to life by the thread of her blood. Her lips parted, but before she could respond, the door opened with a creak. Small footsteps padded across the room. Daddy. The child's voice was high, sweet, and trembling with worry. Layla turned to see a little girl clutching a stuffed rabbit so worn it was nearly threadbare. She couldn't have been more than 6, her curls tumbling over her shoulders, her brown eyes wide and fearful. Adrian's entire demeanor shifted. Strength returned to his gaze, not for himself, but for the child. He opened his arm, only one free from IV lines, and the girl scrambled onto the bed, curling into his side with practiced familiarity. I'm here, sweetheart, he murmured, kissing the crown of her head. His voice broke, just slightly, but he steadied it for her sake. Daddy's not going anywhere. Layla's chest tightened at the sight. She had not expected this powerful man to also be a father, and a devoted one at that. The little girl looked up at Layla then, her small face earnest. Are you the angel who gave Daddy blood? Layla's breath hitched, her hand gripping the chart against her chest. I just wanted to help. Adrian's gaze returned to her, darker now, layered with something unspoken. Gratitude, yes, but also a quiet recognition, as though he sensed this meeting was not an accident. You didn't just help, he said softly. You gave me a chance to keep my promise to her. That's more than I could ever repay. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, Layla felt something stir inside her. Hope, fragile, uninvited, but alive. And as Adrian's eyes lingered on hers, she wondered if fate had just rewritten both their stories. 3 days later, the hospital corridors seemed quieter, as though holding their breath in respect for the man who had nearly slipped away but hadn't. Layla walked briskly, her clipboard hugged against her chest, determined to focus on her rounds. She had convinced herself that whatever connection she felt with her patient was only temporary, born of adrenaline and circumstance. Once he was discharged, their worlds would separate again, his made of wealth and glass towers, hers stitched together with overwork and unpaid bills. But when she turned the corner, she nearly collided with him. Adrian Cole was standing in the hallway, dressed not in a hospital gown but in a tailored suit that clung to his tall frame like it had been made for him, which, she suspected, it had. The pallor of near death was gone, replaced by color in his cheeks, though the faint limp in his stride betrayed the lingering wounds. Beside him stood the little girl, her tiny hand gripping his, the stuffed rabbit tucked under her other arm. Layla froze. Mr. Cole, you shouldn't be walking around without clearance. He smiled faintly, his storm gray eyes catching hers. I was cleared this morning. Discharge papers signed, stitches checked. I'm a free man. He tilted his head, studying her as if she were the one under observation. But before I left, there was something I needed to do. Her pulse fluttered. You don't need to thank me again. Yes, I do. His tone left no room for argument, yet it wasn't commanding, it was sincere. You gave me more than blood. You gave me back my life, my time with her. He looked down at his daughter, whose gaze bounced curiously between them. There's no repayment for that. But I want to try. Layla shifted uncomfortably, heat rising to her cheeks. I don't expect anything, really. It was part of the job. He took a step closer, his presence filling the narrow hallway, though not in a way that suffocated, it drew her in. Part of your job is paperwork, medicine, care. Donating your own blood wasn't in your contract. You risked yourself for a stranger. The little girl tugged at his sleeve. Daddy, is she going to be our friend now? Layla's breath caught. Adrian's lips quirked, amused, but his gaze never left hers. That depends on her. The words lingered in the air, heavier than they should have been. Layla's instinct screamed to retreat, to keep the walls of professionalism intact. She had seen what happened when nurses blurred boundaries, messy, complicated consequences. And yet, standing in front of Adrian and his daughter, something inside her ached. She was so tired of carrying everything alone, her rent notices, her brother's tuition, her mother's absence. For once, someone was looking at her not as a weary nurse, but as a person who mattered. Her voice faltered. I don't know what you want from me. Lunch, he said simply, surprising her. Nothing more. No hidden deals, no business proposals. Just a meal, so I can sit across from the woman who saved my life and say thank you properly. Her lips parted, but no words came. He didn't pressure her. He only waited, patient, his daughter swinging their joined hands like a pendulum. Finally, Layla let out a shaky laugh. I don't exactly dine in the kind of restaurants you're used to. Perfect, Adrian said smoothly, a hint of warmth in his voice. Then you'll show me yours. The little girl beamed, clearly delighted by the idea, and Layla felt her defenses crack. Against all logic, she nodded. One lunch, that's all. Adrian's smile deepened, not triumphant but grateful. One is all I'm asking for. As she walked away, her heart thudded unevenly. She told herself it was only lunch. But deep down, she already knew one lunch would never be enough. The cafe Layla chose was nothing like the places Adrian Cole was accustomed to. Nestled on a quiet corner 2 blocks from the hospital, it was the kind of spot where the paint peeled slightly from the window frames, where chalkboards listed specials in uneven handwriting, and where the smell of fresh bread lingered in the air like a hug. It was also affordable, quiet, and familiar, everything her life demanded. She hadn't expected him to actually show. Men like Adrian belonged in rooftop restaurants with crystal glasses, not here, surrounded by the clink of mismatched cutlery and the chatter of nurses on break. And yet, when the bell over the door chimed, he walked in, tall and striking in a dark suit that turned every head in the room. But what struck Layla most wasn't his presence, it was the little girl clutching his hand, skipping slightly as if this outing were an adventure. Hi, the child chirped when she spotted Layla. We came like we said. Adrian's mouth curved into the faintest smile as his eyes found hers. I keep my promises. Layla swallowed, her pulse unsteady, and gestured toward a corner booth. It's not much, but the soup here is good. He slid into the booth with surprising ease, as though he belonged anywhere he chose to sit. His daughter climbed in beside him, placing her stuffed rabbit carefully on the seat as though it, too, required lunch. A waitress bustled over, starstruck by Adrian's presence, but he barely noticed. His attention was fixed on Layla. You come here often? He asked, voice smooth but genuinely curious. When I can afford it, Layla admitted before she could stop herself. She stiffened, wishing she hadn't revealed so much. But Adrian didn't laugh, nor did he pity her. He only leaned back, studying her like she was more intriguing than any merger or stock report. Then I'll trust your judgment. Soup it is, they ordered, and for a few moments silence stretched between them, broken only by the child arranging sugar packets into towers. Adrian rested his elbow on the table, his gaze softening. You look different out of scrubs. Layla fiddled with her napkin. I'll take that as a compliment. It was one, he said simply. You hide behind the uniform. But here, you look like yourself. Her cheeks warmed, and she quickly shifted the focus. Your daughter, she's sweet. Emma, he said, turning to the girl with a tenderness that surprised Layla every time she saw it. She's my world. Emma grinned. Daddy said you're the bravest person he's ever met. He says you're why he's still here. Layla's throat tightened. She forced a small smile. I just did what anyone would have done. No, Adrian said quietly, his eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that made her chest ache. You keep saying that, but I don't believe it. You gave me more than blood, Layla. You gave me back moments like this, with her. I'll never forget that. The waitress arrived with steaming bowls, breaking the heavy air between them. Emma giggled, dipping bread into her soup, while Adrian tasted his with surprising approval. You're right, he said, voice lighter. This is good, simple, honest. Layla let out a laugh, the tension easing. Not exactly 5-star dining. 5 stars are overrated. His gaze lingered on her, softer now, almost vulnerable. Sometimes the best things aren't polished. They're real. Her heart stumbled at the sincerity in his tone. She wanted to remind herself that they lived in different worlds, that she had no business sitting here with him. But as Emma leaned against her father's arm and Adrian's gray eyes stayed fixed on her, Layla couldn't deny the dangerous truth blooming inside her. This wasn't just lunch. It was the beginning of something neither of them had planned for, yet both already felt too deeply to ignore.